China just made its boldest move yet in a decades-long chess game. And America is standing there, mid-yawn, wondering where all the pawns went. While we've been busy lurching from one self-inflicted crisis to another, shutdowns, gridlock, tax cuts for billionaires, and culture war sideshows, China's been quietly, methodically setting the world on fire in slow motion, not with missiles or tanks, but with currency swaps, strategic resource grabs, and trade routes that don't even glance in our direction anymore. Professor Richard D. Wolff doesn't just suggest this is a problem. If you've made it this far, you know these stories aren't just headlines, they're warnings. Like if you think more people need to see what's really happening. Comment with your perspective. Your voice matters in this conversation. Share this so others can't ignore it. Subscribe for more raw, unfiltered truth about housing, economics, and the politics shaping our lives. Because these aren't isolated events, they're patterns. And the only way to break the cycle is to face it together. He warns that it's a full-blown economic earthquake, and the aftershocks are already rattling the foundations of the so-called American century. Because here's the brutal truth. China isn't playing catch-up anymore. It's not auditioning for a seat at the table. It's building its own damn table and inviting the rest of the world to join while America's still arguing about which fork to use. You want the receipts? Let's talk about what China just did. They've started pricing oil and gas in yuan, not dollars. That's not a quirky accounting trick. That's a direct assault on the petrodollar, the bedrock of American economic dominance since Nixon first unhooked us from the gold standard. If oil starts flowing globally in anything other than the dollar, we lose the power to sanction, the power to borrow cheaply, and the power to dictate terms. In other words, our empire starts to bleed out economically, slowly, painfully, and no one in Washington seems to be reaching for a tourniquet. China is also pumping money into massive infrastructure projects from Africa to South America, building ports, railways, and supply chains that do not run through the U.S. They're locking up rare earth minerals, cornering lithium and cobalt markets, the lifeblood of the clean tech economy. They're not just thinking about today's industries. They're owning tomorrow's. And what are we doing? Subsidizing fossil fuels and congratulating ourselves for bringing back one Intel plant while the rest of the country's bridges crumble. Professor Wolff puts it bluntly. China isn't reacting. It's planning. Long-term. Decades out. They're crafting a multipolar world where the U.S. doesn't call the shots anymore, and they're doing it by leveraging our own weaknesses against us. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This is happening because we've hollowed ourselves out. Our manufacturing base? Gone. Our middle class? Shrinking. Our infrastructure? Embarrassing. Our politics? A circus without a ringmaster. And the worst part? These aren't just academic problems or think tank talking points. This is already hitting you. In your wallet, your mortgage, your job security, your kids' future. Why are your groceries more expensive? Why are interest rates spiking? Why does everything feel so unstable? Because we spent 40 years gutting the economic engine that made this country powerful, and now we're surprised it's sputtering? China didn't make us vulnerable. We did, but China noticed. They noticed we offshored our manufacturing in a Wall Street-led frenzy of short-term greed. They noticed we stopped investing in education while they were churning out engineers, scientists, and tech experts by the millions. They noticed that our political system can't even pass a budget without threatening default. They noticed that we let our public health system rot, our transportation systems decay, and our social contract disintegrate into cable news debates about who gets to use which bathroom. And while we've been distracted, they've been building supply chains, building influence, building an alternative global financial system. You think it's just about China versus America? No. They've got India, Brazil, South Africa, and dozens more lining up to say, yeah, we're tired of Washington's games. Let's try something else. This isn't about communism versus capitalism. It's not about ideology anymore. It's about competence. It's about vision. It's about whether a country has the courage to plan for the future instead of clinging to a past that no longer exists. China is executing a 50-year plan. We can't even manage a 5-week continuing resolution. So what does Wolff say we do about it? He doesn't call for panic. He calls for reinvention. Radical, sustained, unapologetic reinvention. This moment isn't just a crisis. It's a test of whether America still has the guts, the imagination, and the political courage to lead. But that starts with us finally admitting the truth. We've let this country drift into complacency while the world changed around us. If we want to survive this new economic order, we need to build again, not just throw subsidies at corporations and hope for the best. We need to rebuild our infrastructure, high-speed rail, modern ports, resilient power grids. We need to invest heavily in education and workforce development, training the next generation not just to compete, but to lead in AI, biotech, semiconductors, and green energy. We need to bring back domestic manufacturing, not because of some romanticized vision of the 1950s, but because relying on a rival nation for your critical goods is economic suicide. We need to raise wages, expand healthcare, provide housing, not as handouts, but as a foundation for a stable, innovative, productive society. This isn't charity. It's strategy. And most of all, we need political courage. We need leaders who stop selling fear and start offering direction, who understand that this isn't about one election, one cycle, one news cycle. This is about the next 50 years, about whether America becomes as Ben who blew its shot or the comeback story of the century. Because let's be crystal clear, this is not just about China's rise. It's about our own fall. And whether we're willing to stop it, we still have the talent, the resources, the ingenuity. What we've lost is the will to act collectively, the ability to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term strength, the belief that we can do big things together again. Professor Wolff is waving the red flag here, not to scare us, but to wake us up. China's mayhem isn't just out there across the Pacific. It's inside our borders, exploiting every weakness we refuse to fix, every broken factory, every underfunded school, every divided Congress, every corner of this country that's been left behind by a political system obsessed with the next headline and blind to the next decade. So let's make this the turning point. Let's stop pretending that we can tweet our way out of decline. Let's stop waiting for billionaires to save us. Let's stop letting lobbyists write the future. Let's build the future. America didn't become a superpower by accident. We did it by imagining the impossible and making it real. Railroads, highways, the New Deal, the moon landing. We've done it before. We can do it again, but only if we choose to. So if you're tired of watching the slow motion collapse, tired of the excuses, the gridlock, the half measures, then say so, loudly. Vote like it. Organize like it. Demand that your leaders act like this moment matters. Because it does. And if we fail to rise to it, we won't just lose to China. We'll lose ourselves. If you're ready to see America lead again, not just survive, but thrive, then share this message. Comment, subscribe, and demand more. Because silence is surrender. And we're not done yet. This is bigger than trade wars, tariffs, or some cable news soundbite about yuan swaps. What China just unleashed isn't just an economic maneuver. It's a global power shift of full throttle, gloves off play to dethrone the United States, not just from first place, but from an entire podium. And the worst part? They're not doing it with tanks or troops. They're doing it with strategy, discipline, patience, and, let's just say it, competence. While we're over here self-destructing on a diet of corporate greed and political cowardice. Professor Richard Wolff isn't warning us because he's got something to sell. He's not peddling paranoia. He's laying out what the ruling class doesn't want you to understand. America is vulnerable, not because someone outsmarted us, but because we stopped trying. Because we decided that GDP growth at the top was more important than economic health for the 99%. Because we let Wall Street dictate national priorities. Because we turned infrastructure into a punchline and education into a luxury. Because we allowed decades of policies to rot the bones of the American economy. And now we're shocked to find out it can't run a marathon. This is the cost of short-term thinking. Of cutting taxes for the ultra-wealthy while defunding schools. Of letting Amazon avoid taxes while small towns lose factories. Of pretending like we could offshore everything, automate everyone, and still somehow be the envy of the world. Newsflash, envy doesn't come cheap. And right now, we're not earning it. China is out here playing the long game like grandmasters. They're building alliances with countries we barely think about, locking down rare minerals in Africa, forging new financial systems with Russia, setting up trading blocs that sideline the dollar entirely. They're not making noise. They're making moves. While we bicker about who tweeted what, they're laying down fiber optic cables, negotiating energy pipelines, launching global digital currencies. And what are we doing? We're arguing about whether climate change is real while Beijing's installing solar panels at scale. We're debating whether student debt relief is fair while they're investing billions into higher education to churn out engineers, scientists, and tech talent by the truckload. We're sitting on outdated airports, rusted railways, pothole-ridden highways, while they're rolling out high-speed trains that make Amtrak look like a museum piece. This isn't about admiration. It's about a reckoning. China has pulled ahead in areas that used to be our stronghold: manufacturing, green energy, global finance. And the people in power in this country are too busy playing politics to even notice. Or worse, they notice and don't care, because their portfolios are still doing just fine. Professor Wolff makes it painfully clear. The only way out of this is through radical reinvestment. That means breaking the addiction to quarterly profits and finally thinking in generations instead of news cycles. We need to rebuild our country's economic base from the ground up, starting with manufacturing, infrastructure, and education. Not slogans, not photo ops, actual factories, actual bridges, actual schools. That means reshoring industries that were gutted for shareholder gain. It means making it profitable, not just possible, for American companies to build a home. It means tax reform that rewards reinvestment, not offshoring. It means clean energy jobs, not pipelines to nowhere. It means investing in the heartland, in forgotten towns, in places that have seen nothing but decline and broken promises for the last 40 years. And yes, it means taxing the rich. Not because it's trendy, because it's necessary. Because billionaires got richer during a pandemic, while the rest of the country rationed insulin. Because if we don't relevel the playing field now, we'll be stuck with a two-tier society. The ultra-wealthy who live above the chaos, and the rest of us who pay for it. But reinvestment isn't just about money. It's about mindset. It's about leadership. It's about summoning the kind of political courage that's been missing from Washington for a long time. We need leaders who talk about the next 20 years, not the next election. Leaders who understand that you don't win the future by banning books or demonizing immigrants. You win the future by building big things together for everyone. And let's talk about inequality. Because Professor Wolff isn't just waving charts about GDP and trade imbalances. He's connecting the dots. The hollowing out of the American middle class is the vulnerability that China is exploiting. Our people are broke, angry, divided, and exhausted, not because of foreign powers, but because our own system left them behind. Think about that. The biggest threat to American power isn't a foreign military. It's a domestic crisis of confidence. People can't afford rent, can't afford childcare, can't afford health care. The richest nation in the world, and we've got people working 3 jobs and still sleeping in their cars. You think a country like that is ready to compete in the 21st century? Hell no. And China knows it. That's why they're not even trying to invade us. They don't need to. We're collapsing inward. We're tearing ourselves apart while they build outward. That's the genius of their strategy. They're letting our own dysfunction do the work for them. So here's the crossroads. We either wake up right now and rebuild our economic foundations, or we watch the century of American dominance slip through our fingers like dust. And let's be honest, no one's going to bail us out. There's no Marshall Plan coming for us. There's no cavalry. We're the cavalry. We need to start acting like it. That means investing massively in public education. Every child in this country should have access to world-class schools, no matter their zip code. Not for charity, for competitiveness. Because a country that can't train its own workforce doesn't get to lead the global economy. It means universal health care, not as a handout, but as a basic foundation of a stable, productive society. How the hell can you innovate when you're afraid of getting sick? How can you be entrepreneurial when one hospital visit can bankrupt you? It means green energy, solar, wind, geothermal, not because it feels good, but because the market is moving, and if we don't lead, we lose. Period. It means affordable housing, better wages, paid leave, and childcare. Not because it's a wish list, but because these are the pillars of a functioning society that can withstand global shocks. Because that's the lesson of this moment. If your country is internally weak, then no external power needs to defeat you. You'll collapse all by yourself. And friends, we are dangerously close to proving that point. But it doesn't have to end that way. We still have the talent, the tools, the people. What we've lost is vision. And that's what Professor Wolff is demanding from us. A new vision of what America can be, not as a share of the world, but as a builder again, a leader again, not just in firepower, but in ideas, in innovation, in courage. This is our Sputnik moment, our wake-up call. The question is, will we answer? Or will we let history remember us as the empire that choked on its own hubris, while the future was built somewhere else? America isn't standing at some polite, manageable crossroads. No, this is a cliff edge. And the fall below? It's long, it's hard, and it's full of nations ready to step over our body on the way to dominance. China isn't just taking the lead on trade, tech, and infrastructure. They're watching to see if we'll self-destruct while they offer the world an alternative. And that alternative? It's appealing, especially to countries that are sick of being bossed around by Washington. While we've been busy using the dollar as a weapon, sanctions here, trade restrictions there, China's been out in the world offering partnerships. No lectures, no freedom fries, just infrastructure, loans, and contracts. Sure, it's transactional. Sure, it's self-serving. But for a lot of nations, it beats getting lectured by a country that can't even pass a budget or fix its own damn roads. Do you understand what that means? We're not just losing our edge. We're losing our credibility. When we talk about freedom and democracy, while tens of millions of Americans can't afford to see a doctor, people notice. When we claim to be the beacon of progress, but our public schools are crumbling, people notice. When we point fingers at authoritarian regimes, but can't keep our own lights on in Texas, people notice. We're standing in a house full of broken glass, yelling at the neighbors about how they mow their lawn. It's embarrassing, and it's dangerous. Because the global game has changed. Influence isn't just about military might anymore. It's about economic leverage, strategic alliances, infrastructure diplomacy. And guess what? That's where we're losing. You want proof? Look at how global supply chains work now. 10 years ago, we ran the show. Today, we can't even build a car without chips from Taiwan and rare earth minerals from China. We can't make solar panels or wind turbines or even batteries at scale without components from them. How did that happen? Simple. We got greedy. We let corporations send everything overseas to cut costs and boost quarterly earnings. Wall Street clapped. CEOs got bonuses. Politicians cash campaign checks. And the rest of us? We got pink slips, opioid crises, and learn to code pep talks. And now that China controls the critical supply chains, now that they own the ports and the factories and the resources, now we're shocked that they're flexing? Please, this isn't a surprise. This is a consequence. Professor Wolff makes that crystal clear. This didn't sneak up on us. We walked into this with our eyes wide open, and now we want to blame everyone else because we don't like the view from the bottom. But here's the thing. This doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the turning point, the wake-up slap that finally gets us off autopilot and back to building something worth defending. Let's talk brass tacks. We need a manufacturing revolution in this country. And I'm not talking about some PR stunt with hard hats and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. I'm talking about policy, incentives, vision. We need to rebuild our industrial base from the inside out, starting with critical goods like semiconductors, electric vehicle components, and medical supplies. Things we cannot afford to not make here. We need a national strategy to train and employ the workers who will power this revival. That means trade schools, union jobs, apprenticeships, STEM programs in every zip code. Not just in Silicon Valley or Boston or New York, but in Flint, Detroit, Youngstown, rural Mississippi, and every place that's been turned into a sacrifice zone for Wall Street's efficiency. We need to nationalize broadband access, make college affordable, cancel student debt, and fund public universities so aggressively that every young person in America has a real shot at building the future, not just the children of the elite. We need to tax the ultra-wealthy like the fate of the nation depends on it, because it does. We need to make them pay for the country that made their wealth possible. No more hiding fortunes offshore. No more legal loopholes. No more private equity parasites bleeding communities dry. And yes, we need climate investment at a scale that makes the New Deal look like pocket change. Why? Because the green economy is the next economy. And if we don't own it, China will. They're already ahead. They're dominating solar production, wind tech, and EV battery manufacturing. And here we are, still arguing over whether climate change is real, while they're selling us the solutions we should have been inventing ourselves. It's maddening. But the thing that ties all this together, the thread running through every point Wolff makes, is that we still have a choice. We're not doomed. We're just drifting. And if we can snap out of it, if we can summon the courage, the unity, and the damn will, we can come back. Not as the old America, full of empty bravado and military parades, but as a new America, a smarter, fairer, stronger country, a country that knows how to build again, how to lead again. We need to be honest. We're in a fight for our economic survival, and we can't win that fight with slogans. We can't win it with tax cuts. We can't win it with fear-mongering, culture wars, or nostalgia for a past that never really existed. We win it by rolling up our sleeves and doing the hard work of reinvention. We win it by rejecting the tired voices who tell us to wait, to be patient, to settle for scraps while billionaires fly to space. We win it by remembering who we are, not the empire, not the bully, but the builders, the doers, the dreamers, the ones who imagined an interstate highway system and made it real, who split the atom, reached the moon, and launched the internet. That America is still in there, buried under debt, division, and despair, but still alive. And now is the time to wake it the hell up. So here's your moment. Don't just sit there nodding along. Do something. Talk to your neighbors. Organize. Vote. Challenge the lies. Demand the truth. Demand more from your leaders and from yourself. Because the next chapter of this story is being written right now. And you don't want to be the one who slept through it. Like, comment, share, make noise, because silence is surrender. And America is not finished. Not yet.